Sam and Caleb. Look at their last two seasons. Sam's been outstanding. Again, his first however many years notwithstanding, just look at those two, compare them. Come on now. And there's other guys maybe that he could be on over the list, but that one jumped out. I was like, wait a minute here. Like, okay, it must be the Iceman thing. Then I remembered that Caleb's on the cover of Madden this year, I believe. I was like, okay, yeah. Sam just don't have the sauce. Maybe needs a new marketing agent or whatever, because it can't be his play. Yeah, I was a little confused. He didn't at least crack 9 or 10. I don't think he should be in, like the top five or anything. I know Sam just needs a nickname. So maybe that's the goal. People in Seattle, let's give Sam a catchy nickname that transcends. Don't steal someone else's like Caleb did. And maybe he'll get a little bit more love.
Halfway down. Easy forward right. Easy. Fastest going down and hold. Ready. Easy forward right. Easy. And hold. Ready. Fastest on deck. 40 right 5. Easy forward right. Easy. And hold. Preparing to take the load. Taking the load. Clear the vessel. Easy back and left. Easy back and left. Airline still on deck. Roger. Station halfway up. Roger. Vessel's in sight. Please command. Roger. Station just below the rail. And station at the cabin door.
One Democratic lawmaker called the war, quoting now, planned, foreseeable chaos with no end in sight. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, completely. It's just hard. And by the way, the President of the United States is impulsive. He's quixotic. He's changing his mind every day. These are large events. It takes time and a strategy and a conceptual organization to get something done in warfare of this nature. He's not capable of doing this. So again, I cannot foresee how it's going to come out, but I do think both sides have a major incentive to negotiate and to stop the fighting. The likely outcome is what should concern us. And again, the only crucial objective the United States had going into this war was stop their nuclear program, which requires international atomic energy negotiators, inspectors, to be on the ground. I don't think that's going to happen.
17 Americans have died, more than 400 wounded. With roughly 50,000 troops across the Gulf, how exposed are American bases and ships as Iranians and the U.S. ramp up the targeting?
Well, it's another implication of the new age of warfare. The technology of drones can fly hundreds of miles and then pack with a 200 or 300-pound payload. Precision strikes is simply changed the nature of the game. A lot of the ground-based combat power we had in the Middle East has been forced to disperse. A lot of it moved up into either Israel or Jordan, Jordan now being attacked. The Gulf Coast states are exposed. The ability to defend against air attack with these ballistic and cruise missiles and drones requires precision air defense munitions like Patriot and THAAD, which are in limited supply. Both sides are going to have to talk. Negotiations are going to have to get underway. The Iranians will have the upper hand. We're going to come out of this with their nuclear program, I believe, largely unimpeded, and with them basically in control of the Persian Gulf.
Public support, as you know, for this war is falling, yet the White House is asking for billions more to fight this war that President Trump insists the U.S. is winning. What's your view?
Iran is an economic basket case, and it's getting worse. Much of their conventional military power has been destroyed. It's unlikely, even with 150,000 troops, that we could control the periphery of this multi-hundred-mile-long Persian Gulf. So we're in trouble. I think the Iranians, who are extremely ideological, they despise the U.S. and Israel. They are willing to tolerate enormous sacrifice. They murdered 40,000 of their own citizens to maintain control, are not going to blink. President Trump essentially gave them, in this memorandum of understanding, an incredible throw-in-the-towel deal. They should have taken it. gave them much of what they needed. So it's hard to say where all this is going.
Voters here in Tacoma are being asked to increase their taxes in this upcoming August election. What would that money be used for? Well, to help maintain some of this town's 8,000 blocks. There are about 850 miles of lanes throughout the city of Tacoma, and it's an old city, and the roads need repairs. They did just have a 10-year levy that expired, and they say they have a long road of work ahead. This would cost about $125 for the average homeowner every year for the next 10 years. There are critics. The city has not issued an itemized list of every project that's going to be done, and that has some folks concerned. Not to mention the fact that that $125 will increase if property values increase over the years. So the city folks that we spoke with from Public Works say they desperately need the money, but they know times are tough and they're not sure that people are going to be willing to sign on to this. But if you're driving on one of these roads, they say you will benefit, and so will your car.
The talent was there, no doubt, but he worked his tail off. I remember every day he'd be at the park early hitting, be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So he'd get all his work in before most people got there. And so he had this perception early on that it was just the natural, they call him the kid, the natural. And a lot of it was true. He's naturally gifted, but he was there working early all the time. And it was funny, 'cause we'd be out there stretching, like 4 o'clock would be time to stretch, get ready for batting practice. And he'd already hit, sweat, ran, did all that stuff. And so he'd be wandering around, everybody like, Junior, join the stretching, let's go. And he'd keep wandering around and he'd go, does a cheetah stretch before he chases prey? Every day, that was his line.
We know you had one of the best gloves in baseball, but you also had speed. 1987, you led the American League in stolen bases with 60 steals. Can you tell us the story about Rickey Henderson reacting to this?
Well, it's been told a lot, but I'll tell you again. I guess to know the depth of the story, you have to know Rickey, because Rickey always talked in the third person. Like, you might be playing cards and he'd say, Rickey got a sweet hand. Rickey got to smoke somebody, And Rickey would lead off second base and he'd turn and he'd go, Rickey getting ready to go, Reynolds. Rickey getting ready to go. And you can't stop him. And he'd sit there and tell you. He'd be at first base, he'd point at me like, I'm coming, It was unbelievable. So he was still, at that time, around 100 bases every year. He was averaging 100 bases. The thing about 1987, it was the only time in that decade that he did not win the stolen base title. So it was the one time. And 1987, Rickey got injured about May. I think he had around 30 stolen bases already. And I ended up having 30 at All-Star break in July. And so I finished with 60, and Willie Wilson had 59. So we had 59 together on the last day of the season. I steal a bag. Willie doesn't steal a base. So I get back home. The Mariners, we're not in the playoffs. I go back home. Phone rings. I answer the phone. There's no caller ID or nothing like that. I pick up the phone. Hello? He says, Henderson here. I said, hey. Oh, man, Rickey's calling to congratulate me. What up, Rick? 60 stolen bases? You ought to be ashamed. Rickey had 60 at the All-Star break. Click, and hung up the phone. And that was my congrats from Rickey Henderson. And we talk about that till forever, man. He would always tell me, stolen base champ, 60 stolen bases. He was embarrassed for me.
I love it. Oh, my gosh.
There are a lot of questions surrounding why a Kenmore Air seaplane crashed in the San Juans yesterday. Incredibly, all 11 people on board survived. They got out of the plane before it burst into flames near Susha Island. This morning, I spoke with Jimmy Anderson. He's an attorney and a pilot who represents victims in aviation accidents. He says video of the moments before the crash could provide investigators with valuable information.
One of the things we can see is that it is not a stabilized approach and it's not a stable landing as it comes in.
Anderson says float plane crashes are not common, but they're also not uncommon.
I was looking back through the crashes that I've done in the San Juan and surrounding area, and I've got 4 or 5 in, probably about 10 years.
This isn't the first Kenmore Air crash in the San Juans. Back in 2016, a float plane crashed off Lopez Island and sank. All 4 people on board were rescued. The NTSB has opened an investigation into the crash that happened yesterday. They're going to be considering a lot of different factors, including the weather, to figure out what caused that pilot to make an emergency landing.
This is the hospital where the woman who was shot was taken to. Now we're learning that she was released yesterday, the same day she was shot 6 times. Police say a dark-colored car pulled up in front of the women's car and a gunman got out, opening fire. When officers arrived, they found the women's silver Ford abandoned and riddled with bullets, including several holes in the windshield. Minutes later, 3 women walked into UW Medical Center Northwest. The woman who was shot was later transferred to Harborview, and investigators recovered about 22 shell casings at the scene and learned the suspect fled southbound on Aurora Avenue. Note, this happened in a neighborhood residents say gun violence is notorious. The city recently installed concrete barriers and other traffic calming measures to try and curb crime in the area, a move one man who didn't want to be shown on camera disagrees with.
But for the most part, the barriers are just a hindrance, really, to tell you the truth. Because it's like, what are you going to do? He's just going to go to the next street and go up and down the next street.
City council members have commented on the matter. Councilmember Deborah Juarez wrote in part, traffic barriers are good, but they are not enough. More needs to be done. And Councilmember Bob Kettle wrote, we need a comprehensive, nonstop effort that uses any and all tools available 24/7. We cannot do anything less. On that front, now detectives are using CCTV cameras and neighborhood surveillance video to try and track down the suspect. Police are also increasing patrols in the area as investigators continue their work. In Seattle, I'm Christian Balderas, King 5 News.
Wanted to quickly hop on here because we have a huge update to our roofing crime ring investigation. Homeland Security has now set up a dedicated email address for people who believe they may have been targeted by the roofing operation at the center of our King 5 investigation. I want to share that email with you. It's Seattle Contractor Fraud at hsi.dhs.gov. A big thank you to everyone who has reached out. Since our reporting aired just last week, we've already heard from 25 more victims across our region, representing close to $600,000 more in losses. This really shows just how widespread the scam is and how many people it's hurting, so much so that now Homeland Security is involved.
This isn't right.
We absolutely do not want this person here.
Neighbors near Enumclaw are raising concerns about a level 3 sex offender who just moved to the area. Robert Lowe served a 30-year prison sentence after he was convicted for raping and beating a 21-year-old woman. He spent more time behind bars for repeated assaults and threats. Courts blocked his freedom once again and again until this month when a King County judge ruled that he no longer fits the sexually violent predator label and released him with no restrictions on where he could go. His neighbors didn't find out where he ended up until after he moved in.
We have friends that live right over here that honestly want to sell their house right now and move, they told us yesterday.
We want our voices heard. We want the community to know that this isn't right.
The King County Sheriff's Office says they will verify Lowe's residence in the area every 90 days. Detectives say they will do that with unscheduled in-person visits.
Just a mile from the fire line, Amy Long is caring for her elderly mother while waiting to learn when she can return home.
Hey Mom, I'm gonna get your food out of the fridge and freezer, okay? It's getting hot.
More than 280 households have been evacuated in Grant County after the railroad fire sparked late Wednesday night.
This year, we're learning that we're wrong and that 2026 is proving to be one of the worst fire seasons in Central Washington.
Crews battled triple-digit temperatures and strong winds as the fire grew to about 660 acres in less than 24 hours.
Well, we had a pretty mild winter. We had a lot of moisture. I think a lot of growth makes fuel for fire. So I think we all kind of expected something like this, but maybe not so close to home.
7 homes have been destroyed. No injuries have been reported.
It wasn't until daybreak when we could go through all the neighborhoods to assess the damage, identify which homes had been lost, and then to assure that there was no one inside those homes when they were lost.
Thursday, local firefighters were relieved as state mobilized crews arrived. Fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters played a major role.
Grateful that we have good first responders. And they work hard. They've been at it since the middle of the night last night, so grateful they're around.
Oh, that's why the aircraft is so important, because we just couldn't get our resources in there due to the terrain.
For many evacuees, the focus is now helping neighbors and waiting for the chance to return home.
Yeah, we're a pretty close community, so it's hard for everybody.
It is a huge craft, two huge craft, and they have 6 people on board. With multiple injuries, there are at least 6 other people that have been heard from other, but we are still waiting on information from them.
Remember when I said this painting of Jimothy raised more than $6,500 for charity? Well, that number has grown a lot since then. Artist Ryan Henry Ward says after businesses stepped up to match donations of this painting, they have now raised over $45,000 for the Ballard Food Bank. What started out as an iconic painting of Jimothy, the most famous raccoon in Seattle, has now turned into helping provide thousands of meals for Seattle neighbors.
And some good news from that plane crash that we've been telling you about as breaking news for the last half hour or so. 11 people accounted for after that plane crashed near Orcas Island. Kenmore Air confirming 4 people have been transported to area hospitals in serious condition, but 11 people, including the pilot, were on board. We don't have word on the conditions of the other 7. The flight took off from Lake Union about 4:30 this afternoon. Again, the pilot and passengers, 10 people on board, they have been accounted for. Kenmore says that the flight, again, was headed to Roche Harbor. Several agencies, including Orcas Island Fire and Rescue, are responding, including a helicopter that is on the scene there. We're still working to get more details about this, but that's the latest that we know right now about that Kenmore flight that went down near Orcas Island.
Congress held a hearing Tuesday on a bill that could expand the removal of harbor seals and sea lions in an effort to protect the endangered salmon population in the Pacific Northwest. I'm Bethany on the King News Desk. Supporters say wildlife managers need more options to protect endangered salmon in places where seals and sea lions are eating a large number of fish. Critics say the bigger problem is damaged salmon habitat, and they don't believe this bill alone will make a major difference. Another big point of confusion was whether regular people would be allowed to shoot seals. Supporters said that's not what the bill does. Any removals would still need federal approval and would only be handled by wildlife agencies, tribes, or authorized professionals. There wasn't a vote Tuesday, so the bill is still moving through the legislative process.